I posted a poll on Twitter to see which anime-style fighting game got people interested in, well, anime-style fighting games. And even though the result wasn't anywhere near what I was expecting it to be, with BlazBlue taking a huge lead in the results, I was pleasantly surprised that Persona 4 Arena was even this close to some of the big-name fighting games on this list. Now you may be asking yourself, well, that isn't really surprising, it's Persona, it should have gotten higher than those other games since it's a popular franchise. And while that's technically not wrong, there's more to it than that. And there's something that I'd even failed to consider, which is, for a majority of anime fighting game fanatics, BlazBlue has much more weight in the community, with it having over 7 different games. And when Persona 4 Arena came out in the arcade, BlazBlue already had 4 different versions by that point, which doesn't include maybe just overall arcade to console balance patches. And not only that, but Persona 4 Arena only had 2 official versions, with its final update not even making it to home console. And that's not even the end of it, because, well, Persona 4 Arena was also one of the first PS3 games to get region locked. That's a whole different story in itself. So with these reasons I just listed, I'm not surprised that Persona was so low on this list. I'm actually surprised that with these issues I mentioned that it even got that high in the first place. Especially since lately for the past year or so, I've always heard people mention the game briefly, like, oh, that's just, Persona's just like that other Arxis Kusoge fighter, similar to BB Tag, which isn't particularly wrong per se, but I feel like by saying that, it really just brushes over why Persona 4 Arena was special to a lot of people, including myself. When you ask people what got them interested in fighting games, you'll hear most likely a variety of answers, such as fun gameplay, cool looking characters, maybe a combination of both. I know that's how it is for me. One of my favorite things about fighting games is the potential to play a game with a roster from a pre-established franchise that I'm attached to. Now, of course, that can happen with any fighting game roster if you give it time to develop a standalone story over, a course of a couple of games or so. But when you occasionally get a fighting game based off a beloved franchise people are already familiar with, then you get a fighting game that people are already going to have a special connection to its characters. And this applies to Persona 4 Arena. Sadly, it's not just a roster of characters with cool or cute designs. These are characters we know everything about beforehand because of our prior knowledge of the series. And suddenly, I don't judge any of these characters by their appearances alone. I already love these characters. This character, oh, that's my homie. Oh, this piece of shit. Your reaction from seeing a DLC announcement goes from, oh, that character looks really dope looking, to, oh, Junpei, yo, that's my boy. Of course, this doesn't just apply to fighting games based off of other RPGs or anime. Like I mentioned before, it is technically possible to get that same level of connection with unique fighting game IPs. It just takes more time to establish that same level of bond, especially when people play most fighting games for gameplay rather than story, right? But those fighting games that fill its roster with characters we already care about, it just doesn't get better than that in my opinion. This added to the fact that they also made the gameplay mechanically like a love letter to the Persona franchise. Something I found extremely appealing about this game's system was just how faithful it was to the original source. And by that I mean the original JRPG Persona series. The attention to detail I saw in this fighting game and how much love they put into these characters made me just realize how lucky I was to see this franchise turn into a fighting game. Like for Naoto Shirogane, for instance, with her having access to the Mudo and Hama skills that let her one-shot the opponent. In the original JRPG, she's able to use these skills that have a chance to inflict instant kill on the enemy shadow. And so they incorporated that into the fighting game, and they revolve around this skull counter icon, where if she hits you with certain moves, it'll drain this number to 0. And when it's 0, and if she hits you with Mudo or Hama, it'll instant kill the character regardless of how much health they have. And what's crazy is that there's characters in this game with even more ambitious gameplay than Naoto. Take Junpei Iori, for instance, with his baseball game plan. I'll just go ahead and read you directly from the Megami Tensei wiki. Junpei's battle style is greatly influenced by the baseball scorecard right next to his SP gauge. Understanding how to use this is key to Junpei's game plan. Every time Junpei manages to hit his opponent with his bat, he gets a single, or a runner on a base. In the same way, reflecting projectiles with the bat counts as a single hit as well. This continues until he gets a runner on all bases, after which hits a runner back to home base, thus scoring a run, adding another point to his scorecard. Each run scored progressively gives Junpei the capacity to deal more damage per hit. In addition, the number of runs he scores is kept between rounds. Once his scorecard reads 10 runs, he automatically activates his install, Victory Cry. Now, to explain this in simpler terms, Junpei is a baseball player, right? So they made his game plan based around scoring runs to add to his scorecard. And when he gets all 10 runs, Junpei powers up and becomes a stronger character, which gives him HP regeneration, and it changes his bat hits into clean hits, which gives him more flexible combo routes. And not only that, but there are other nuances to his baseball scorecard mechanic, in that when Junpei gets hit with an attack or combo, he receives an out, with 3 outs clearing the runners from their bases, forcing Junpei to fill the field again to continue scoring points. And there's more to it than that. Like when Junpei whiffs his bat, he gets a strike. 3 strikes results in an out. And another thing, when Junpei gets his bat blocked, Junpei gets a ball with 4 balls, giving him a runner on a base. And when he uses super, Junpei's able to allow the runners to all score points, and you get the idea. So, that being said, you could see just how much fun the developers had designing this character. And this is just one of many characters like that in this game. And overall, it's just so refreshing to see just how much heart and soul they put into this roster of characters. And we've seen this kind of thing before in fighting games made today, like with Dragon Ball Fighters or Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. The love and care they put into Persona is just as equally faithful to the original game series as it is for Dragon Ball and Grand Blue. They even went as far as including the status effects that you see in the SMT and Persona games, like Freeze, Shock, Stun, Charm, Sleep, Paralyze, and many more. Them going this far is what makes me such a big fan of these games in general. Now, this isn't to say that this design philosophy comes without flaws, because a drawback of making the characters this unique and faithful to the game and including status effects means it's an absolute nightmare to balance this game. And so the trade-off of having every character be this unique means that there are characters that really get the short end of the stick, while others are, well, living the good life. And I guess that leads into my next point: the chaotic game balance of Persona 4 Arena. Persona 4 Arena, and especially its sequel Ultimax, was an absolute nightmare with its balance. And it's not just because the top tiers are absolutely broken, it's more everything about the game is just, yeah, it's broken, right? If you whiffed an uppercut and didn't have burst, you're dead. Some of the characters in this game were eating at scraps. Meanwhile, the Chad, the chosen one, Narukami, who was S tier in the first game, got buffed. Who in the right mind thought it'd be a good idea to give this mofo a command grab? Did I mention this game's damage? No? Well, take a look at this clip. Are you kidding me? What is that? Oh, this again. Are you kidding me? Oh, this is actually real. This is actually happening right now. Bro, my life! Did I just Ooh. Yeah. If that sounded like too much, well, I haven't even mentioned the worst part about the game's design, which is the shadow characters. Now, to explain how the shadow characters work and why they're a problem, basically the shadow characters have a unique version of the character where they lose your burst mechanic and the awakening mechanic in exchange for a mechanic called Shadow Frenzy. And the way this works is at 100% meter, you can activate Shadow Frenzy, and it reduces the SP cost of moves by half. So that sounds pretty cool, right? No, wrong. This, in my opinion, is the root of the issue with this game. Damage is already way too high, and characters already one-touch you in this game. That cool stuff I mentioned with Naoto earlier in this video, well, you could just throw that out the window because Naoto just kills you with 100 bar, and then you just lose. What's that? You're saying Shadow Naoto didn't sound that bad? You didn't think she sounded? Okay, alright. Let me show you something worse. Mitsuru is, Shadow Mitsuru. Maybe one of the most cursed things in this game. It's the only way I can describe it. Cursed. Oh my goodness. And everything I mentioned just now, I would argue is honestly the the beauty of this game. This wasn't a game that was trying to achieve perfect balance. It was just trying to make every character a blast to play. The top tier characters are broken, but honestly, even the low tier characters are just so much fun. When you look at modern fighting games, there tends to be this problem where developers strive to achieve good balance to suit the tournament scene. And what this ends up doing is it makes characters play under a certain set of rules and restrictions, with a few games having exception to this, of course. Dragon Ball FighterZ, for instance. For the most part, the low tier characters, or even the middle tier characters, are weaker than top tier characters because the top tiers can do just about everything other characters can do, but better. This may not be the perfect example, but take Gotenks for instance. He's basically just a better version of a lot of the standard characters in this game in just about every way you can think of, with more stuff on top of that. However, because Persona was designed with just pure fun factor in mind rather than balance, we end up seeing bottom tier characters that have unique moves that are so satisfying to pull off and use. Junpei, for instance. There isn't a single person in this community that would try to argue he's a strong character by any means. However, he still has mechanics that make him so satisfying for players. It just makes people drawn to him regardless. And you don't really see that design philosophy these days. Liz, she's considered a bad character in this game's standards, but she just kills characters with one touch. Labris is also considered bad, but in what universe is this Red Axe considered fair and balanced? Fair and honest, Best Girl Chie is considered mid-tier, but much like her BB Tag iteration, she still has some nonsense in this game. She needs it though. This game, it just feels like every character is so much fun to play. Is all of this stuff pretty broken? Is it unfair? Sure. But I think something worth thinking about is differentiating what is considered bad by technical standards and what is considered fun. Because at least for me, I think that there can be a balance of both. A well-balanced game can be a fun game, just the same as an absolutely broken game can also be considered a fun game. But of course, that's mostly subjective, and it varies per person. And for me personally, Persona just manages to pull off being one of the most satisfying fighting games I've ever played, while also being hilariously broken. And not only that, but it manages to do this with a cast of characters that I was just so attached to. When I finished Persona 3 and Persona 4, it kind of left me feeling a bit empty. I always knew that I could always just replay either of those games, but when I first finished those games, I felt like a replay just wouldn't ever be the same. I just wanted to see more of these characters. I wanted to see these characters spending more time with each other. I guess I just wanted to see a sequel of these games of some kind, and Persona 4 Arena, I actually got that. The game takes place as a sequel to both games, and it almost just felt like a high school reunion in a way. Not only for the characters themselves, but also for myself, the player. And for that reason, as well as this game being so much fun, this is a game that made me fall in love with fighting games. And this was the reason I wish this game got ported to modern consoles. This is honestly what made Persona 4 Arena so special for me. Thanks so much for watching.